Can meditation help us heal from trauma? Yes, it surely can. To understand how meditation can help us heal, the process of how trauma impacts our brain and body needs to be understood, which is why I would like to briefly explain you the process now. When we experience a traumatic event, stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline rushes through our body, and the associated traumatic memory is imprinted into our amygdala, which is the part of our brain's emotional limbic system, as a sensory trigger. Sensory trigger means that the trauma memory is not stored like a story or mental memory, but by how our five senses were experiencing the trauma at the time it was occurring. The memories are stored through the sensory fragments of visual images, smells, sounds, taste, or touch. The traumatic memory then loops in our brain's amygdala, which governs our body's stress or fight or flight response. This disconnects us from the prefrontal cortex, part of our brain which is responsible for reasoning, awareness, and cognitive processing. When people experience repeated trauma, their brain becomes disorganized and it tends to misinterpret the sensory fragments as it loses its ability to distinguish between what is threatening and what is normal. For instance, if someone experienced a trauma in their past while they were seeing a red light, they will be prone to interpret the red light in the future as a threatening trigger for trauma. Without their awareness, upon seeing the red light, their brain and body will be triggered back into a trauma response as if they are re-experiencing the trauma. As can be clearly understood, repeated trauma can cause severe damage and shut down the higher reasoning structures of our brain. This can result in our body to be always wired towards fight or flight, or could be understood as a stress response, forming the foundation for chronic anxiety, hypervigilance, and post-traumatic stress disorder. It's quite clear, trauma severely damages our physiological and psychological well-being. Now, how does meditation help us heal from past trauma? In clinical studies, scientists have now established that only after a few weeks of meditation, our brain's fight or flight center, the amygdala, shrinks. As the amygdala shrinks, the prefrontal cortex associated with higher order brain functions such as awareness becomes thicker. Also, the functional connectivity between the amygdala and the rest of the brain gets weaker, while the connections between areas in brain associated with attention get stronger. In conclusion, by cultivating a regular meditation practice, we become more aware, we increase our ability to access a more thoughtful response to stress, and are able to integrate the traumatic memory looping in the emotional regions of our brain with the rational part of our brain. This, my friends, is the key cornerstone of recovery from trauma. Love to all.